The draft is over. Summer League is over. Free agency is winding down. Maybe. That means it's officially the off-season portion of the off-season. Joining me to talk about all of the goings-on, now that there isn't anything going on, my longtime co-host, my favorite basketball talker, my favorite basketball writer, Samson Folk. Samson, welcome back to Pacers coverage.
Thanks. It's cool that we can now say long time. There's been enough work. There's a catalog at this point. It's nice. I had a pretty fun time watching the Raptors, their hellacious helter-skelter style of basketball, which of course, since this isn't a Raptors podcast, I'll say was extremely limited by a floater-led offense, which was not super fun to watch, but the defense was awesome. And I caught 2 Pacers games. Tayon is like quietly, I'm like, this guy's great. This is awesome. It's not big, it's not sexy numbers, but he popped out a lot. Ray J, I thought, was actually really good for Summer League, but I'm not sure I see it necessarily at the next level. I mean, Quinton, pop off, dude. That first game was nuts, man. It was fun. And also there's a bunch of Pacers stuff has happened since you and I talked. like so much Pacers stuff has happened since you and I talked, and you've done work on it. And maybe I'll chip in my own thoughts at the very end. I won't make you rehash anything, but there has been goings on.
Lots of goings on. Some of them we'll talk about, and some of them we won't, because I feel like the fan base is ready to move on from some of them.
Sure.
But a broader question, just about Summer League in general, before we talk about these individual players and some of the off-season signings, trades, I guess I should say, is how meaningful do you find Summer League, like from the Raptors' perspective or the Pacers' perspective, in terms of like what you're seeing schematically translating at the next level? Like, do you expect that the things that you saw the Raptors do defensively or things that you saw the Pacers do offensively or defensively might be something that you see in the coming season?
Yeah, probably not on a game-to-game basis, but if it's consistent throughout, I think that does signal intention on behalf of the franchise, and more so with the Raptors than the Pacers. But the Pacers also had like a hell of a comeback win, where I was like, oh, it's the same team. They're doing the same thing. But Summer League, it's tough to gauge exactly how it translates because some of these teams are just so poor and the style of play can be so poor and they can have such big weaknesses that it just, depending on the game, it can be an excellent strategy or a terrible one. But if you play like 4 or 5 games and it's consistent and it works, domination at Summer League typically means, adequacy at the NBA level at the very least, and truly struggling typically guarantees truly struggling. Obviously, Ochai Agbaji last season I don't know how he went from 20% from the field as a 22-year-old at Summer League, and all of a sudden he was like the 9th man of the year, but it happened. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it.
I actually really enjoy Summer League, and not because I enjoy the actual basketball that's always played, because that's not the highest quality, but
Sure.
I think it becomes a test ground oftentimes where you can find little things that teams are trying to do, and I bet we'll see that later on. So like 2 years ago, the Pacers revamped their defense heavily to what was then the guard your yard scheme. And you can hear a lot at Summer League on the broadcast, in the gyms, very echoey gyms. You can hear calls. I was like, oh, all of the ice coverage is gone. Everything is middle. They really want to be up pressuring on handoffs. You can hear them calling out veer, veer, veer when the ball is breaking the free throw line. So it's like they want to guard the pick and rolls 2 versus 2, and that was an early precursor of the many broader changes they were going to make to the defense. Sometimes offensive sets you'll see, like, we want to see how this works at Summer League, and then they end up running them fairly often. So just to let everybody know, if you're here just because you like the Caitlin Sampson podcast and you don't care all that much about these individual players we're going to talk about, I do have some little basketball segments, breadcrumbs along the way, that I was like, that could be something not only for the Pacers, but also league wide. So that's something to look forward to. But the plan for today is to run down the players at Summer League for the Pacers who have some sort of organizational tie, whether via the draft, whether via standard contract, or current two-way deal or past two-way deal. So that's 5 different players. Starting with Taylor, because I was also pretty intrigued. I thought I was like, this is interesting because I'll admit, like I wasn't while you and I were doing finals coverage, I wasn't tuned into a bunch of Liberty games, checking out Taylor Peter.
Well, also, close friend of yours as well, Josh Codenera, pro scout, also was like, he's pretty nice. There was a lot to his game. I think I'm very intrigued to see if he exhibits a lot of control. Is like he's not a super expansive player, but when he's on ball, I think there's a significant amount of control to his game, and I do wonder how that looks at the next level, and that's a big question. But that was the number one thing that stood out. Obviously, for those people who know his game coming out of college, like he's a heat pump. He's very efficient, incredibly so, and he has some defensive chops. So control on ball, extremely efficient shooter, and defensive chops. Sounds like the Pacers have had like three of those guys that they've brought onto the team over how many years, and they're like, okay, we're gonna see if this guy can make the jump in every facet to the next level. And Taylor, he's got a shot, man. So he was interesting to me. You don't get like a ton of tape because it's not like he was the featured player or anything like that. He's bouncing off. He's doing a good job of interpreting his teammates. But I liked him.
At Liberty, Taylor Peter only had 14 field goal attempts out of drives. He had the highest true shooting percentage in college basketball, but a lot of it was coming off of cuts and in transition, some in spot up situations, but not a lot out of multiple dribbles. At Summer League, he went 13 of 14 on twos, 4 of 16 on threes, but 5 of the 13 twos that he made were in isolation or out of pick and roll. And that was a little bit surprising to me because I did a quick get to know you piece about Taylor Peter and Cam Jones. And there were times where he was coming up out of handoffs. And I was like, I really just want him to use his inside hand and push the ball downhill because he would be a lot more um, efficient moving downhill than what he was. And I was wondering what his ball handling was going to look like. But that is actually what stood out to me as well. So I will run the film clips that I thought were interesting about Taylor Peter. Beginning on the defensive end, this was, I thought, the most intriguing sequence that he had because he does pretty well. Like I wasn't always thrilled with some of his defense within actions, within screen navigation. I thought that there were some times with like switcher stays where he caused some domino effects for his teammates. But in terms of his ability just to defend the ball and do like the guard your yard scheme, I was pretty impressed with his ability to be physical and defend with his chest. And then like here, you're even seeing an extra vertical contest there, which I don't know how that would play at the next level because he's automatically going to be giving up size if he was guarding at the three position full time. But then comes up out of the handoff against the Thunder. The Thunder switch it, retreat dribble, and then attacks and actually reads the help and makes this drive and kick. Like I wasn't expecting to see a lot of that based on the little bit of film that I watched of him at Liberty.
He made the pass on his first step, not his last step, which I think we'll see probably a difference between he and Cam as far as drive decisions there.
And then even just like catching it in the spot up situation, using the little hezzy to get to the rim. I thought he was pretty decent at actually reading the second line help defender too when he's just sliding up out of the corner, being able to slither and get back to his right. Again, he was only missed 1 2-point shot in all of Summer League. And this, I think, is like one of the most valuable shots that somebody can make for the Indiana Pacers when they're not an advantage creator, when they're multiplying the advantages of other people on the team. The Pacers, when they need to reignite the offense or what you might call play after the play, like it's in a neutral situation. Johnny Furphy's not going to get anywhere with a drive. So they go into like basically a toss and chase, or then they go and screen. I really like that Taylor Peter can take one dribble and be able to shoot behind that pitch. In this case, he made the shot. But if I rewind it back, when you can shoot behind the pitch like that, it's different than if Johnny just continued driving and drew the help there and it was just one pass away to Taylor Peter versus when you can get behind the ball like that. Because if he was standing at the wing, the corner defender for the Thunder could stunt up there and potentially disrupt a shot or force an extra pass, maybe. When you're doing it off the pitch, there's no one to help when you get behind the ball in these situations. And the fact that he was able to throw it out ahead with one and still be able to shoot. So those were some of the things that stood out. But this is also like a broader NBA concept that I wanted to get Samson's thoughts on because it stood out to me because it was back-to-back plays, the exact same play with two different players running it in the game against Oklahoma City. So the Pacers, the main team, will run this fairly often as a baseline out of bounds play. It's basically just to get to Chicago or like a pin down, a handoff with a pin down in the middle. Taylor's setting the pin down. Oklahoma City does not do a particularly good job switching this. They kind of cartoonishly both overcommit a little bit, which allows Tayon to slip it and get to the rim, but also Tayon slipped it and get to the rim. Because I can tell you a lot of times at the NBA level, teams will switch that baseline out of bounds play. And if Aaron Nesmith's the pin down screener, that's typically who it is, or Benedict Matherin's the pin down screener. I don't often see them even look to slip or cut that from the corner. Hence why Cam Jones in the exact same role in the exact same game at the beginning of the contest, the Thunder also switched it here. There's the switch. He could be backdoor cutting, slipping, just like what Tayon did. He does not. He backs out to the corner. The help is very high. He still did not cut, and he ends up shooting the ball. So the reason why I wanted to ask this is I literally once had a coach tell me, and no, this is not a coach from the Indiana Pacers, if that's what people are going to assume. I once had a coach, I heard them say that they were willing to give up a few back cuts every game in exchange for playing higher in the gaps, because what they found is that players don't really like to back cut that much, and that the natural inclination is that they prefer to catch and shoot or drive with the ball in their hands. And some of this is also a product of more heliocentric offenses, 5-out spacing offenses where, you stand on that X and provide the proper spacing. So what I want to know from Samson is, when you see a clip like this and you know that like last year at the NBA was the highest average pickup point in the last 12 years, ball pressure defense is permeating throughout the NBA. How valuable do you think cutting is in the 2025-26 NBA?
Incredibly so. It's also this is roughly the same point as what we were saying when it was Shea and J-Dub running in action together. And I was saying, I don't think Shea is going to punish this that way. The proclivity of most players isn't to cut. And that's a lot of what this pickup point stuff is. It's meant to punish and tire the other team, of course, and it does want to create turnovers, but it also, in dating back to our, why do you love basketball episode that we did, where we're talking about like how the defensive proclivities or defensive, I guess, tendencies had shifted over time, so that the post up is a little bit more potent now because people, they don't have the same, they don't guard it the same way they used to, so they're not protecting the same things. You can kind of invert things and punish defenses that way. And insofar as like people used to the other big used to space to like the elbow in the pick and roll, and there used to not be cutting lanes, but now everybody is pushing out so that these lanes now emerge. The same way it takes teams time to pick up on like the veer back switch, and we're going to do this now because we have to cover more space. It takes offenses time to recognize like we need to cut more. And sure, it was the one pass away stampede cut originally because teams are playing goalie in the lane or something like that. But it does need to extend out to a few other actions and from a few different spots to be. I think that's why players like Derek White and that kind of archetype of two guard is so important. One, for providing the spacing, but also being like a guy who's able to cut and get gritty going to the inside to really reward the players who are drawing that extra attention and that ball pressure. It's a very long answer to say, yeah, I think guys should cut more.
It's not even so much that, but like if you were in a front office, would you be prioritizing finding guys who are very intuitive cutters? Like, how much would that matter
I
to
would
you?
have been doing that already, quite frankly. I love guys who cut well. It's why when I watched, I think, 2 games of Jalen Williams as a Thunder when they weren't a good team, and I was like, this guy's the perfect basketball player because I saw how he cut. And it just so happened that he became excellent at other things too, but I love guys who cut well.
And it's interesting to me because even aside from the wide open chasm that Cam has to cut into there, the player at the wing also has a pretty broad one.
Yes.
Because when we're talking about like playing higher in the gaps, an interesting concept that want to see how the NBA adjusts to that as well is there's so much more of a heavy nail presence a lot of the
Yes.
time that I feel like, going off of this premise that a lot of guys like Cam not looking for that back cut right there, is that you should play the corner guy above the check as well to shrink the gap for those stampede cuts a little bit more. Because like I said, I mean, how many back cuts would you have to give up to be like, no, we're not going to play higher in the gaps anymore. We're not going to use as much ball pressure. I mean, it's like what I said. This coach was like, if we give up a few of those a game, that's fine. Like,
You
it's not going to alter the approach.
Well, There was a Pacers game against the Raptors where there's a lot of cuts, if I
33
if I
points worth.
recall.
That was out of like a lot of slips for
Yep.
sure. But I guess like part of it too for me is that the ball pressure almost negates it to an extent too. Because
Mhm.
now, like, if you're forcing the ball much wider, it becomes incredibly hard to execute those backdoor passes. So
It's
that's where
also
I can go back and forth. Like how important is this? And like will we see a big uptick? Like because last year was kind of I wouldn't necessarily say a spike, but like you could see a big trend was the ball pressure from multiple teams. So I really want to monitor next season the cut frequency, which there's
yeah.
no way to measure that for the NBA at large, but like how many points off cuts is the NBA giving up? And is it
This
as much as I'm expecting? Because, like I said, those passes become a lot harder to make when you're forcing wide angle drives.
Well, this also becomes something kind of like timing up because this is becoming a lot more important for NBA defenses. The weak side rotation is obviously incredibly important, and being able to time that up is really important. And a lot of the best drivers know how to throw off that timing. Guys like Luka Doncic, guys like Tyrese Halliburton, guys like Darius Garland are also very hard to time up as passers because a lot of guys are quite rote in the pass that they're looking for. It's like an escape dribble, grab, make the pass. You can time them up and you can squeeze the lanes because you know what that looks like. But there are some players who are, and it's why Luka was historically able to undo the Thunder's defense. And Jokic was also a really good response to that, is like the poise and constant threat of them on ball was resistant to all the pressure so that they could outweight it and beat it. And I think truly great ball handlers are the ones who will see this and reward this more often. So obviously, without Tyrese this year, the Pacers probably it's not going to be as rewarding, I presume. But around the league, I think you're going to see the wizards of ball handling and playmaking. That's why guards are still important, and they're not, a relic of the past. And you can't just give offenses to wings, is because the timing of on-ball passing is gonna still be very important.
So you're not all in on Vision 6-9?
No, this Lewis and I wrote, we did a state of the big piece on Minute Basketball. We also did a state of the wing piece where we declared like this isn't offense, man. It's not going to go like this. And then S did this big piece before Wembanyama came to the NBA. He's like, "Do you think guards are going to die?" And I was like, "Hell no, dude. Guards are so good at things. There's a lot of things that guards do that are like you can't just. It's a different style of play. It's different growing up. You've seen 1,800 different permutations of something, just one small micro thing than a wing has, and you learned it growing up, and that stuff matters. And we see it happen all the time. And yeah, I love guards. God
Sometimes I
bless them.
wonder if it's a case of like over indexing on the things you see and you don't see because I've
Yeah,
been very spoiled watching what I think is arguably the best point guard rotation in the NBA. And for
yeah.
a long time yearned and was like, it would be really great if this team had a big wing. It would like if they just had one medium-sized guy and then they traded for Pascal Siakam. And I was like, you know what? This is pretty great.
Siakam is what was the meme? It's like one small, large boulder. Do you remember that where it was like a medium sized or small sized large boulder? It was like a highway patrol account. It was like, please be wary. There's a whatever size. It was ridiculous. I have to go look this up actually. You keep talking and I'll revisit this joke.
I have no idea what the meme is. I haven't seen it. I'm sure everybody listening is going to be really surprised that I don't know something that's been popular in the lexicon.
Oh
But that
yes.
was actually
Okay, I found it. It's from San Miguel Sheriff at Sheriff Alert. Large boulder the size of a small boulder is completely blocking eastbound lane highway 145. Large boulder the size of a small boulder. Oh, that's good. That's kind of like not to make everything about Andrew Nembhard like we do, but that's that's Andrew Nembhard.
very true. To close up my thoughts about Taylor and Peter from the film that I clipped together there, the Pacers, Ray J and Quinton Jackson, who we will talk about later, are already on two-way contracts for the Pacers. They have one left to fill. If it were me personally, which people already know because I put this on Twitter, I they drafted Tayon 54th overall. I want to see more from him. So that's who I would be penciling the other two-way contract in for.
Oh, really? Is
Yeah.
that what you'd be doing? Because I think that's what Kevin Pritchard would be doing as well, based on based on Twitter behavior.
I mean, there's flexibility here. They could also, they could open a regular standard roster spot for somebody if they wanted to. But the other guards that the Pacers drafted this year at 38th, Cam Jones out of Marquette. Cam Jones played, kind of mirrored his college tenure here with what he did at Summer League. Was playing more off ball when Quinton Jackson and Ray J both played in the first game. Then as the players started not playing as much and were sitting out games toward the back end, we got to see Cam Jones play point guard like what he did as a senior. Played point guard the entire game against the Knicks. I think that there's some quirks and rhythms of his game that stood out pretty heavily to me, but broad strokes thoughts on Cam Jones.
He's such a strengths player. And that's a good thing in some sense, but his weaknesses are so glaring. And I've obviously this has been said elsewhere. I'm beating a dead horse here to some degree, but the right hand not being really an existent or relevant part of his game is a huge deal. And that you could also reference that, Tyrese is extremely great player despite being limited with his left. I don't think it's it's true, but I don't think they're in the same realm of like. I watched, and like credit to Cam because this possession was truly a work of art for a lefty like myself. But to come around the screen going left, to like put a guy in a hostage dribble left, the Gortat screen is on his left side, to gather with his left, scoop around the other side, and then come back to the left side of the rim. I was like, this is socialism, how left he is dedicated. You know what I mean? Like, this is communism from Cam. And I was really impressed. I was like, this is a lot of determination. This is creativity within the grounds that he set out, but those grounds are too small right now. There's a lot of stuff. I think there's potential for him to start including the other side of his game. There's lots to like, and I think against lesser summer league players and rosters, he was able to kind of get it off and still do it on his terms. But I think he's probably still pretty far away. Egg on my face if I'm wrong, and God bless him. I hope I am, because you always want players to rock out. But I would be surprised if he's able to determine the rules of engagement the same way against NBA players on the whole. That's my Cam Jones thing. But there are things to like. And he was drafted, I guess, only one ahead of Elijah Martin, Raptor. So, oh my God, that dunk. Those are the two best dunks, Elijah Martin and Johnny Furphy. There's some dunking going on Summer League.
Our mutual friend Polar sent me a message after the Pacers
Can I
drafted.
say very quickly, sorry to interrupt, he also sent me messages. He already had started clipping and converting into GIFs Carter Bryant screen navigation. I was like, Polar, you're a sick man. What are you doing?
You mean GIFs?
Oh, Lord. Oh, yeah.
So anyways, Polar messaged me after the Pacers drafted Cam Jones and told me that he saw a lot of Lance Stevenson in his game. Similar body shape, that they had similar drive tracks, similar shooting motions. And when I watched him, I'm like, I can see it. And Cam also likes to get to the pocket pass in a similar motion drive as Lance does as well. I think that Cam, what stood out a little bit at Summer League is that he's less athletic than Lance Stevenson was. He doesn't have as much kick and burst to get to the rim. He's not as much of a bully driver as Lance Stevenson was, but there certainly is some similarities. When I was watching the game for the get to know you piece that I wrote about Cam, I watched Marquette play St. John's because St. John's had one of the best perimeter defenses in college basketball, and it was a tournament game. So, of course, I was like, yeah, they're trying everything they can to make sure that he has to use the right side of the floor. And Marquette was ready and had sets to go, but like you're playing with a college shot clock, and there was so much rigmarole going on to like free him loose so that he could get back, and they were orienting the offense heavily so that he would be able to get back to his dominant left. And that showed up at Summer League as well. in ways that I'm sure that we can probably contrast a little bit to, I guess, in an unfair way, the two stars for the Pacers. One of the stars who really likes spin moves, and the other star who oftentimes gets weak to his less dominant hand as well. But
I don't even I don't remember the last time I saw Pascal perform a spin move. It just gets sat on so much. Like, I guess he has, like, the fade over the shoulder, but the last time I saw, like, an actual pirouette from him, because that when he popped off, it was, like, twice a game, and now it's just it doesn't get to be part of his game anymore.
so, quick numbers. Cam had 8 free throw attempts in 4 games. He shot 6 of 18 from three. He's 1 of 5 on dribble jumpers, but 10 of 18 at the rim. He does have a good combination of footwork and touch, to be sure. So these are the things that stood out to me about Cam Jones. I thought that this was. I've tried to start all of these clip packages with what I thought was the most impressive moments from these guys. So this was a game tying play against the Knicks. Another handoff situation out of a baseline out of bounds play. He patiently waits for Enrique Freeman to set the flat screen in the empty pick and roll situation so that he can attack left. He likes the pocket pass, as I mentioned. Then Enrique finishes, and they ended up tying the game with that. That's important because, like, right here, they want to run snug pick and roll, which was supposed to be for Cam to get middle when they run that action. And then they like to pair it with a corner pin in on the weak side to outnumber the help. And Cam rejects it in pretty tight quarters out of a snug pick and roll to get the pick and pop to Enrique. Credit Enrique, who shot 5 of 9 on threes, although he didn't make that one. What you're going to see here is this is actually
No
a
need
rare
for miles. Enrique shoots
shot 5
60%
of
on
9 at
three.
three at Summer League. Exactly. This is a rare instance of Cam attacking to his right and trying to make a pocket pass a little bit off target, and not only because he made the pass with his right hand, but because he was assuming that Baker was going to roll and Baker popped instead. But this is probably the most telling possession of the entire Summer League with regard to Cam, in that the Knicks started applying full court pressure in the fourth quarter. He's using a get action to get off the ball so that he can get back to his left. Once he's on the left side of the floor and the screen comes, he likes using that really exaggerated sweeping cross right to left to reject the pick. Once he's rejected it, and to be fair, I don't really know why Enrique dived to the block in this particular situation. That's not the best spacing decision. Once he rejected, just need to pop there again. But it takes a couple dribbles with the right, and then it's it's very rare that he's going to finish any shots with his right hand. He almost always uses the spin move back over the shoulder to get to the lefty floater. That one crawls in for him. There were times, like, you can tell that Buzelis is thinking about it here when they played the Bulls. He's going to the spin move. I think that if teams had some scouting film of Cam Jones, they're going to use the nearest help side defender to help one pass away because they know that spin move's coming. Although Buzelis didn't actually try to dig down there, but he can get caught stranded in like an endless like pivot because he so badly wants to get back to the left-hand floater in the paint. And then this one stood out to me too, where he's just dribbling at full motion, and the accuracy to make the pass cross court with the right hand really isn't there. So before I show you some of the defensive clips, you already talked about some of the
Yeah,
left hand dominance. What's going on there? That's the thing that I would differentiate. Like, yes, teams will weak Tyrese Halliburton. I literally have film of Jamal Mosley when they played the Magic yelling, keep him there, because they wanted to corner him on the left side of the floor so much. The Milwaukee Bucks did that in the playoffs. The Cavs did that in the playoffs. Difference being is does Tyrese bail out of left-handed layups sometimes too early? Yes, but he's just as effective passing with his left hand as he is his right. He's just as effective doing that. Some of the counters that the Pacers get to and found in the playoffs allowed him to get back to his right. So I guess I would ask you, like, after you've seen that collection of clips, how limiting do you think it is for Cam's play style, which is much different than Tyrese's, that he is this degree of left-hand dominant?
okay, so two things and then one thing. You said kick and burst, which
Mm-hmm.
is that's great. That's a great way to describe athleticism. Has more kick and burst. Secondly, you said rigmarole, also very good. Thirdly, Cam, you can tell his range of motion is really quite limited with his right arm. What makes guys like really good wrap passers or really good at beating different angles of coverage that's coming their way is that you'll see they have they have a bunch of slots that their shoulder can fit into and they can throw from, and they can have this wide range of motion. It's not just about your catch radius as a lob guy. It's as a passer, your range of motion in your shoulders and your arms is incredibly important. And Cam's right arm, when he does go to it, it's very tight to his body. And it's going to mean that the range of motion and the avenues as a passer is going to be extremely limited unless he changes that and improves it. And that range of motion is going to be, I think, incredibly limiting until that improves. So I think it is going to be a big time limiter of his one ability to finish at the rim with his right hand if he ever tries to take that step, and two, as a passer on his right side. You can be a push passer, but being a hook passer, swing passer, throw passer, anything like that, it's tough to get to that point if you're not going to extend your range of motion.
And, Benedict Mathurin has to be a push passer fairly often because he prefers to drive left but doesn't make many live dribble passes with his left. And it buys time for the defense to recover at times.
Yep.
So something to consider. And then the other thing, too, is that Tyrese is equally comfortable pulling up from three in either direction and creating space from three in either direction. So for me, when I'm watching Cam Jones, I'm thinking that right now, because of where the athleticism is at, he's going to have to be crafty. And he has some craftiness to his game, to be sure. Like I said, he's pretty good playing off of 2 feet. His footwork is decent. He has really good touch around the basket. He was one of the best finishers in college basketball last year. But pairing that with the fact that the shot's pretty erratic right now, something's going to have to give there. Like there's either going to have to be development with the shot, or more so the right hand's going to have to come along pretty quickly, or else it could be limiting for the Pacers in addition to what we're going to look at the other end of the floor.
Yeah, and just as a final thing, because I did come across, I'm sure, quite low on him. He does have significant strengths, and that's a great position to be in, is that you just have to work on your weaknesses. And those strengths, if he even like ameliorates, brings up to the level of mediocre his weaknesses, could really start to shine and pop. And this is a young man. He's not as young as some of the prospects who came out of the draft, but he's a young man who is basketball is his full-time job now, salaried, has the Pacers with him to help him work on all this kind of stuff. Hope springs eternal. He can always improve this kind of stuff, and he has a fun profile to work from as he looks to improve his game.
Because I will say that, I mean, like I showed in that first clip that was my favorite of his, the pocket pass to Enrique to tie the game, is when he's on the left side of the floor, he's very good at making second side reads, and he can make them at all three levels. He can get off the ball very quickly, like out of stack actions, read the tagger, manipulate the tagger even. He makes the pocket pass well, and he can make drop-off passes around the rim too. So that aspect of the point guarding is encouraging to see. I don't know that right now I would be expecting, if I was somebody who watched him at Summer League, that right off the bat he's going to be your third string point guard, unless over the rest of the offseason and then into preseason he makes a development in one of these areas that I didn't see in these 4 games quite yet. But
Yeah,
at
strengths
the
or just quick strengths can create avenues. Like as you said, Ben Mathurin, the reason why teams can kind of like cheat and catch up to his passing is in a lot of cases he has to bring the ball to 2 hands. That does a lot for the team to like, okay, load up, right? And live dribble one-handed passers don't allow the same thing. If Cam became like an excellent short mid-range shooter or something like that, going left, and he became a guy who brings the ball to 2 hands for his floater, that gives him an avenue to like play off of the read option aspect of it. There's things he can add as strengths that help paper over his weaknesses. He's a young man. We don't know exactly if that will happen or how it will look when it does.
defensively, some of the burst, like I noticed a number of blow-bys here, and then some of it too, like after an entire game. Actually, let me back up, because this is another fun basketball topic that I located along with the cutting one that I want to get your thoughts on. So the Pacers played in Enrique really high here. And my first impression when I saw this live against the Bulls, where they're in corral here and then they get the big on the short roll, they they pulled Tayon over really early to put him at the midline. And then look at Cam Jones's positioning on the weak side, Samson. His back is to the sideline. Your thoughts on that stance?
No, not what I think that doesn't. that makes you susceptible to a number of plays that go to the weak side. Whereas I think you want to put yourself in a position like there's classic like C man C ball as just like a baseline, but this would put him in a very difficult position. I think if the ball goes to the corner, one, if the ball goes above the break, two, because he has to flip his hips completely now, and he's not even in that strong a position as a dig man because he's facing like chest to him instead of being able to put it. There's nothing about this that I like really. How's that for an answer? Sorry, Cam.
What if I tell you that I kind of like it? And
You like this?
I think
Whoa!
it's kind of intriguing. At first, I was like, when I watched it live, I was like, what just happened? That was kind of ridiculous. But then when I watched it back, and based on something that I had noticed about Pascal like 2 years ago, if you're Xing out on the weak side and you have your back to the sideline, and like let's pretend that Cam was a little bit lower than where he is now, like down
Sure.
closer to the elbow, and he's in the line of the skip pass out of the short roll, then you know in the X out rotation, it's very clean and easy for you. Like your job basically is what you're hoping to take away there is that you're going to take away the skip pass because you're at the very least, they're going to have to throw it over the top of Cam and it's going to buy him time to recover to that corner. Also, if he's taking the skip pass, then Tayon automatically knows I am closing out to the wing. Like normally when you're doing an X out rotation and your back would be to the baseline, there's mystery there in terms of who's swapping which recovery path. Like when the short roller makes the pass, you're splitting two, you take the first pass, and sometimes both defenders might end up be closing out to the same person. In this case, there's quite a bit of clarity, and you're actually aiming, like the goal would be to take away the skip pass. Like it's mildly interesting to me. Like I'm not entirely sure this was intentional, but I'm also not entirely sure it wasn't intentional because let me show you. I saved this clip of Pascal because likewise I thought it was ridiculous in real time. But now that I've seen that in Summer League, I was like, maybe it wasn't. Look at Pascal's positioning, Samson. See how he deliberately opened his hips to have his back to the sideline as the weak side defender?
This is an over. Well, I do see, but this he's already in the paint. It's an overloaded
It's not an
side.
X out, I admit that.
Yeah,
But the actual
and
stance
and
is
Andrew is
similar.
there too, so he gets to play like he is truly zoning it up. You know what I mean? He is truly zoning it up. I I do understand your point, but I also worry too about if Cam is doing that. Let's say he jumps at a skip pass, or you know, let's say the short roller goes in the air and passes over the top to the wing. They drive that closeout. Like, is Cam in a terrible position as the helper? Then I wonder. Like, of course, he can do more prep to show in the driving lane afterwards. But yeah, I do wonder. Although you're obviously doing your best to convince me by
No,
pulling a
I'm not trying to
Pascal clip.
convince you. I'm not trying to convince you because Samson, this ended very poorly. Like this was one of the worst defensive games that I've watched Pascal play.
That's
This
a
was
funny.
this quarter against Houston was when I remember I texted you and I'm like, I'm having some concerns. I'm having some concerns about the level of the defense because this is how it ended up.
Well, because he had to flip his hips all the way around. Yeah. Anyway,
But back to
I'm
the Cam
I'm
position.
glad to be in the heart of Caitlin land for what it's worth, but I do have concerns about this. But maybe I'm late to a burgeoning new defensive tactic.
I I think it might have some legs. Like this isn't where you'd want to be at the elbow if that's what you were doing. And this also ends poorly because Taylon jumps in the air and like you said, the pass goes to the wing and then Cam is in a pretty poor position to be able to get back out there. Plus he guessed wrong and went to the corner. So it's a wide open three. But if Taylon hadn't jumped and you knew this is the scheme, like if there was actual planning
Right.
in place and you knew, look, we're gaming it to take the skip pass away and X out possessions, Taylon maintains his feet, then he would know I'm closing to the wing because we are trying to take away the skip, and it would clarify what those rotations would be. Like you'd have to have defenders who are capable of really playing the cat and mouse game with the skip pass and being smart with it. But like I don't think that's what the Pacers were trying to do right here. But like sometimes in summer league, There's tanky things that happen, and I was just like, it looks ridiculous in real time, but maybe there's something you can do with that. I don't know.
Maybe it's possible. It's possible that I'm not seeing the true value of this, but I also will say this is the only podcast that will discuss this.
We're like,
listeners, this is a treat for you.
next last point about the Cam Jones defense is he ran 15 pick and rolls in this game because he was really the only point guard because Ray J and Quinton both did not play. And by the end of it, like this is even on the right side of the floor, and he finishes with his inside left. And immediately after that play happened, it was a very high usage game for him as well. And I wondered because at times there was some very high usage game for him at Marquette as well because of the circumstances there. And I'm kind of hoping that's what's impacting some of the defense because the defense was a little bit not to the level I was expecting based on other things that I've seen. But also, like, that's not necessarily uncharacteristic for rookies at the NBA level. So I'm not going to harp on that too long. But, like, I just, based on what I've seen, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Cam isn't automatically getting the nod as the third string point guard right off the bat. Although there were things that I really did like about him. Like, I hope people didn't take it that way. Just like sometimes you can have a 20-10 game in summer league and there's still like limitations that, okay, once the NBA has seen that, that's going to be a lot harder to do type of things.
Leonard Miller had a 20-10 game that we watched, myself, Trey, and Josh, and he played horrible. Like, he had a truly terrible game. He was simply Terrence Shannon Jr. was just dumping the ball off to him, and it was like, nice, this is awesome. But you can find some stats at Summer League. Like, stats are not what makes NBA players at Summer League. They're good. They're fun and they're good and they're nice. I liked being able to do a film review on Colin Murray Boyles after he had 20 points in a game. That was great. But there's a reason why I put me doing his highlight package, which is grabbing rebounds off the rim with a big hook. It's stats are one thing. The game is another, which is also why the review of Tayon was more glowing than the review of Cam.
Why do you think that?
Because I thought the in-between stuff with Tayon was better than the in-between stuff with Cam.
I think maybe it's partially because there were aspects that popped off about Tayon that I wasn't expecting to see.
That's the thing too.
And also maybe because, like, you would kind of expect that if Tayon at some point were ever going to crack the rotation, it would have to be in a Ben Shepherd type mold. And to this point, Ben Shepherd hasn't shown that type of intrigue as a driver. That does not mean that Tayon Peter is ahead of Ben Shepherd right now today, because and team defense-wise, he is not. But I've not seen Ben Shepherd put the ball down on the floor and use a hesitation dribble even at the summer league level, yet let alone at the NBA level. So that might be part of it. I might have been over-indexing for the fact that he did things that I wasn't readily thinking, oh, I didn't know you had that. A player that I did tell you to be ready for to watch, though, I remember a few times on the podcast, I was like, Johnny Furphy's an interesting player. What do you think about Johnny Furphy?
He is just... There was this thing when I watched Josh Giddey drive, I was like, man, I'm just seeing elbows and knees, man, and just works his way, just like squirms his way to the rim. He does not have the upper limit athleticism that Furphy has, but Furphy is also kind of like elbows and knees driver. God, he works. Like he really does his damnedest to get downhill, which I really love. The dunk on Asenge, holy moly, man. It went... Like a lot of guys get it to like here. He dropped it to his waist and then punched it.
You could hear ratchet sounds coming from his vertebrae. I'm pretty confident.
It was nuts. Furphy, I like. There's a lot to iron out with his game, but I think that he has very functional athleticism. I think he works really hard to try and imprint like what are his advantages on the game, and I think he threatens. Big deal. Not everyone threatens, and might sound like opaque verbiage. You might do a better job of enlightening the listeners as to what I mean when you pull up the film. But he threatens with the ball, and threatens in a way that I believe it will also threaten at the NBA level too. And the jumper, we'll see how it goes. Yes, no, like there's some inconsistencies there. There's some points of failure in the jumper in the lower half that what is it? The posterior chain, the kinetic chain isn't always so clean. I've been doing a lot of biomechanics talk on this podcast. I don't know what's taking over me.
I feel like it's necessary when you're talking about summer league and prospects more than maybe it is when we're doing podcasts about the NBA finals. But
Yeah. We didn't have much biomechanics in the NBA finals, but Furphy, I do like, yes, in the long and short of it.
and everything that you just mentioned was kind of things that I mentioned in the primer that were things that we needed to see from Johnny Furphy. Because I don't know if you read the primer, likely not, because you don't read basketball articles.
Okay, I read the notes you sent me, and this is one of the first times I ever watched clips beforehand. However, I did not read your primer.
Or any, like, most of these things have been based off of articles that I already wrote. So I'm guessing you didn't read those
I
either.
think other
But
people have been enjoying them a lot. I've not read
the
them.
point was going to be that from the primer is some of his catch and shoot decisions above the break were not quick enough as a rookie. He only had 15 total drives from above the break, albeit in only roughly 350 minutes played. He shot 7 of 28 above the break as threes. That was somewhat of a carryover. I do not have the numbers because I haven't looked at them since they drafted him. At Kansas, he was much better from the corners than he was above the break as well. So some
The
of his,
inverse of Grady, by the way.
yeah,
Grady was great above the break at the
another
corners.
Kansas shooter.
These Kansas white boys are gonna find their way. Fingers crossed.
Johnny Furphy, though, I felt like some of that during the regular season was footwork related, and some of it was just like not always reading the closeout quick enough and deciding what to do. So some of that got better. He also 20 pounds of muscle. I don't know how we measure out and decide how much muscle is added.
We got a 20 pounds of muscle quote?
Yes.
Wait, did they say from like over the course of the season, or what did they say?
I mean, you could definitely tell a difference in him. Could you not tell that? I mean, I guess you
Well,
didn't
yeah,
watch a lot of
I
Johnny Furphy
could.
film.
This happened with Jacoby Walter as well. You know, Darko was like, Jacoby Walter's put on 12 pounds of muscle since the end of the season. And I was like, 12, Darko? Like, guys just say anything. I don't think that's possible.
Some amount of muscle was put on. He looked bigger to me than he
Yes.
did at the end of the year. These are the things that stood out about Johnny Furphy. Again, we will be beginning with the good, or what I thought was good. So this was not the dunk of the summer, but it would have been the sequence of the summer if the dunk of the summer had not happened. So Johnny Furphy catches the ball, makes a pull-up three in transition, notices he has a little bit of space and readily shoots it. Then at this end of the floor, he helped as the low man, ended up being very good in contain against Buzelis, is actually on the floor here before he gets to the other end of the floor and gets that touch pass from Tayon Peter and had that dunk before he had the more impressive one that we're going to see here in a few seconds. But a lot of all these highlight plays, what stands out is kind of like when we were talking about things during the playoff run that, you know, Tyrese had a lot of clutch shots, but right before those clutch shots, Andrew Nembhard often had clutch stops. Johnny Furphy, before he's getting a lot of these highlight dunks, is oftentimes having really impressive defensive plays that are preceding them. So like here he's playing and drop and recovers back out to the shooter, plays very well and contain again, and walls up at the rim and then gets his own rebound and then ends up running and getting to the other end and using that same little behind the back dribble to get through traffic in order to get to the basket. These are the things that you like Johnny Furphy at the best, and why I'm confident the Pacers drafted him, because they liked what he did in transition. And the defense popped off several times at the actual NBA level last year, where there would be certain games where like, oh, like, and I'm not trying to call this person out because Jarris Walker got better defensively over the last month of the season. But earlier when Johnny Furphy was getting some playing time, it'd be like, oh, Jarris just lost Brandon Miller on an off-ball cutting action. So they had to put TJ McConnell onto Brandon Miller. And now Jarris is on Micic, and Jarris and Johnny are very different defenders, and they play the four spot very differently. And that Jarris is a very ambitious defender. He has great hand-eye coordination, cat-like reflexes. He's an event creator defensively. Johnny far more plays and contain defensively, and he's not as ambitious as Jarris. But like, anytime you get to watch somebody who's 6'9" getting over the top of a screen and defending at the point of attack, I think that's a really cool thing. So there were games in the middle of the season where like, okay, now Johnny Furphy's on Micic, or they're in Brooklyn and Johnny Furphy is guarding Dennis Schroeder. He's guarding other point guards. So
Is that his measurement, 6'9"?
That's what it shows.
Wow, because this is the two things are meeting for me, right? Because his feet look a little bit sloppy when he's defending, but he just eats up space, and guys don't get that edge on him, which is, to his credit. There's a lot of effort and size is showing up there. When I see him like walking about, I don't see him as this huge wing player, but it starts to show up everywhere. He lifts to the rim really easily on offense. He covers an immense amount of ground on defense. I don't know why when I look at him, like his stature, it doesn't speak to me, but in his play style, it shows up on the court like a lot. Like I see him move his feet and I think like, oh, a guy should have the edge, but he's just eating so much space defensively. And then like when he's stepping through the lane and it doesn't look like he had to gather for much lift, like his head is almost at the rim. It's just, it, he doesn't look like Paul George doing it at that size or something like that, but he's extremely
No, he doesn't
functional.
float in the same way that
Yeah,
Paul George did.
but he's very
Um,
functional.
yeah, and like I would say that in these 4 games, like he probably drove the ball more frequently and he didn't even play in all 4, just in the 3 that he played than he did in the entirety of the regular season, which I'm pretty confident that was a point of emphasis for the Pacers that they wanted to see
Mhm.
him quote unquote stretch his legs here. So the thing though is I don't know how many pounds of muscle were added, but if I were to make a juxtaposition between he and Jarris, I would say that sometimes Jarris's physique doesn't always match his physicality, and for Johnny, sometimes it's the reverse of that, and that
A
he plays
large
very
boulder the
physical.
size of a small boulder.
Similarly, yes, it's the reverse situation. So, anyways, Johnny catches the ball here. This is a drive. A drive. I think he was coming up out of the corner, out of stack. And something that stands out to me is a lot of these are very wide angle drives. So he's literally at the left wing, and his inside foot is touching the right block as he's trying to turn the corner. This one, like, there's several times where he's attacking way too early before the screen even comes, and that's putting him at a disadvantage because he doesn't attack very well in straight lines. And then when he gets deep, the spacing didn't always do him a lot of favors. I didn't think sometimes on the outlet passing in terms of when that cut needed to come, but he gathers very high. He plays very high. The way I termed it in the article is like, in order for him to reach higher heights, he needs to find and manage lower lows, is how I termed it. Because a lot of his game is still very high, not only just in the gather and how straight up and down he is as a driver, but that can also sometimes show up. That's the one where you needed to 45 cut sooner so that he has a more clarified passing avenue. But this one you're going to see again almost the same situation where the angle is so wide, which Enrique does better to cut behind the drive in that situation. But his outside foot's almost always touching the opposite side of the lane anytime. And he's driving, and then like you said, like he's very willing to drive into crowds in a somewhat Benedict Mathurin style way. They're not doing him a lot of favors here, sliding up along the arc to actually be in his eye line. But he also had somebody pretty wide open right to his left. But like he was getting into the teeth of the defense more often. Once he got into the teeth, what happened after that wasn't always exactly what you want.
He's aggressive, or he was at summer league, and it was nice to see. Also, I wonder if he's gonna play so high and you're gonna be a guy who drives into the lane and keeps the ball high, adding a floater, uh, like there is, as you said, getting low. There's different avenues for him to choose if it's hard for him to get lower and to knife and do certain types of styles of driving is one thing. But also, if you're going to remain like a high driver, having the floater in your bag is pretty important and allows for a different avenue to scoring, maintaining pace and composure in the lane, and also passing from high points to cutters.
We missed the shot there, but I mean, some of the times when he's having to step up along the arc or he's coming off of a screen, the footwork isn't making him very shot ready. I don't know what you thought of the shot. I mean, he didn't have a lot of makes here. I don't even have the number in front of me. Where's it at? Where did he shoot? 3 of 12 from 3 at Summer League. He made the one there in transition. He did make a one dribble, one pump 3 in the corner. And I think he made another one above the break. But I'll let you say what you want to say if you thought stuff about his shot, because that's obviously the big swing skill that he's going to need to have.
Yeah, I think it's the mechanics are inconsistent, and you got to connect the lower half better going forward. but he's a young player, and a lot of young players have to focus on that, especially young guys who are 6'9". Added muscle mass will probably help him do it, especially if he has it in the lower half. And it's something that he'll work on, I presume, with the team. But uh, he doesn't have like incredible touch, at least to my mind. So I don't. There's nothing that makes me think like, oh yeah, he'll find a way to just kind of like get the ball into the basket. But I mean, jumpers are tough. Guys get drafted as good shooters out of college, and then it just doesn't really pan out. Guys get drafted as like complete non-shooters out of college and become good catch and shoot guys who have like not much off the dribble stuff in college end up being demons off the bounce at the next level. A lot of it is it kind of like an unspoken thing, because how do you actually vet out who's like working on things that will translate? But some players just add a lot to their game as pros because they work almost prodigiously, and every player works. But what ends up on the floor is tough. I'm rambling at this point, but I don't know. His shot looks a little clunky to me.
Yeah, I mean, and it's somewhat different to the Kansas shooters because Grady's shot difficulty, I imagine, is very high for the
Yeah,
Raptors.
yeah.
Johnny Furphy's shot difficulty is not that high, and he's shooting, like I said, what did he shoot? 20 of
3-12.
62 at the G League
Mm.
level. He was around that in the regular season for the Pacers as well. This isn't like him running off a million picks and shooting shots there. Like I'm envisioning some of the things that Grady has to do in order to manipulate the defense for the Raptors because they don't have as much on-ball creation. The Pacers have a lot of on-ball creation, which sets up easier shots for Johnny, and he hasn't been hitting them at a high clip. So that's definitely the swing skill, although there's still a lot of things that I like about him. But the other aspect of a spot where he also plays very high is with some of these closeouts. Like they were switching some of those chin cuts, and then like you'll notice he's finishing almost all of these very high in his body, which led to some 3-shot fouls. So that's another thing that stood out just from the defensive film. But I think for how the Pacers aim to play defensively, that there could be a spot for Johnny in the rotation, perhaps sooner rather than later, and also because he is a fairly competitive rebounder, that matters for them as well. So I think he'll be in the rotation on day one? Not necessarily, but injuries happen, and I think he could be a part of the team's future. I like what I have seen from him.
He's a player. The shot is really, because there's so much of his game that finds its way, that just like he steps on the floor and it's there. But to be a guy who's nonstop, no matter what, finding his way into games repeatedly, the jumper has to be there, because the the driving, it's not going to be as simple as just like you get to take straight line drives where there's like one last
Right.
ditch rotation to the rim that you have to beat. It's like, well, you're going to see two bodies, maybe three. You have to make decisions against moving defenses that are also doing a good job of bottling you up. And what makes all of that much easier and much more linear for you, hitting threes. So we'll see. But he's a player. It'll be there.
One of the
Caitlin of May and June was correct.
one of the lineups that they were playing with him was TJ and 4 4s. So it was TJ, Pascal, Jarris, Johnny Furphy, and Obi Toppin, which ended up just being tons of TJ ball. Like TJ's usage, I think, was over like 30% in those lineups. But like the reason I bring this up is like, what do you see Johnny Furphy as at the NBA level?
A
And
three.
positions are somewhat not super important here, but you see
Yeah,
him as a
if
small forward.
I see him as a small forward, like maybe a jumbo three or something like that. But also, I mean, the the groundbreaking stuff that teams are doing is really messing around with this kind of stuff, and the positions that, like, that's what I talked to Elijah Martin about, because Elijah Martin is a relatively limited ball handling guard who still has offensive pop, who shoots the three, who plays point of attack defense, who's very strong. And I said, well, there's kind of a theme of these off ball guards playing in the dunker spot. And he said, actually, I've done that a lot. I didn't do it at college, but that was my introduction as a high school player. I played out of the post and I played dunker spot. So he's like, that would actually rock for me. And and he said my high school coach was old school, and so his old school coach prepared him for new school two guardsmanship, right?
That's
So
interesting.
it's tough to pin down exactly, but I guess in the simple sense, a 3.
I guess I'm thinking about it more like who's going to be defending him. And just from what
Mm,
I've seen of the drives here, I think I still see him as a 4.
yeah, that's fine. You've watched more of him than me. Like
I just like
your
ESPN
opinion and
had
my
him on the
opinion
depth
are
chart as a 2. And I
oh
just like
well,
to me a 2 is kind of wild.
a 2.
But maybe I don't know. Yeah, a little bit
I
wild for me based on what gets asked of the 2s in the Pacers offense, but
you know what that is? Is they probably were looking at him and thinking like, because I don't know why he's 6'9". He looks like he's 6'6" or 6'5" to me until I see him
it might
walling people
I
off.
don't look up what the Pacers had. Like I just this is a super easy Google, Samson. I haven't been like measuring how tall I think Johnny Furphy is. I haven't. I mean, it wasn't like at games 3 and 4, you and I were watching Johnny Furphy do a lot out on the court for me to be like, you know what? I think 6'9" is overestimating things a bit.
6'9", equivalent to 2.06. Listed at 200, now 220, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. He's a player. He'll figure out. Also, Wikipedia lists him as a shooting guard.
Well, there you have it. If Wikipedia and ESPN say it, then that is what Johnny Furphy is. Next year, if the 2 guard starting spots up for grabs, might be Johnny Furphy's. We can't say for sure.
The camp battle may be his.
Might be. Next up, kind of going to lump Ray J and Quinton together because Quinton didn't play a whole lot here, just the first game. Ray J played the first couple, then didn't play in the fourth, where we got to see Cam play point guard, and then he did play in the consolation game again. Do you have somebody there that you like better than the other? Not necessarily to pit them against each other, but they are both on two-way contract. They are both guards. They both play the position very differently.
Yes. I think Quinton will be better at the NBA level. Ray J looked really great. I thought that he like the table setting that he brought was extremely important. The off the bounce shot making that he brought was extremely important. Even if there was like a lot of floaters involved, there was also the pull up three. You gave me the stats. Was 4 of 9 on dribble triples or something like that.
Yep.
That is important. He also, I think, has a decent recognition for like cutters, lobs, all that kind of stuff, moving parts in his offense. But he is one of those guys that I think very accomplished G League, tough to make the leap as the level of shot maker he has to be probably is like incredibly high to make it work at the NBA level. And I'm not so sure. Whereas Quinton, it's easy to see how he could just be a guy who exists on an NBA team, can kind of like blow up for a quarter offensively as a cutter, maybe a couple shots go in with the jumper. Teams are trying to play deeper during the regular season, pick up points. He can be hellacious on ball. All that stuff trends in the direction of Quinton. And also, he had the most fun game of any Pacer, I think, in the tournament because that
applies to most games. That when Quinton's on the floor, your attention is going to be on Quinton. He is like a monster truck rally ad. It's like Sunday, 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 and that's what Quinton is like pretty much 100% of the time on both ends of the floor. Like I in my mailbag in November, people were like, compare as often things happen in November. Like compare the Pacers starting lineup, of which Quinton was one of the starters at the time, to Thanksgiving sides. And I was like, oh, he's gravy because what he gives you is gravy, but also he has a tendency to seep into areas that you don't always want him to be seeping into. Because like defensively, he'll help one pass away. He'll peel in places that you really wouldn't want him to all the time. But he's if there's a battle, like a 50-50 battle for Quinton Jackson is more like an 80-20 battle. Because he's gonna get there. Like he's gonna get the loose ball, and he's going to be extremely combative trying to get over the top of screens. Like that is something that you can always count on. He's going to get to the rim. I enjoy the Quinton Jackson experience for the most part, and he did. Like when they needed him to play minutes on two-way contract, he was able to do that. He was filling in while Andrew and Aaron were both out. Some things that did stand out, like they played a game in Houston, and Şengün was guarding Quinton Jackson. So Quinton Jackson had like a career high scoring game. I think he had 20. I don't remember how much he ended up having, but also the offense was like, give the ball to Quinton at the elbow and let him attack Şengün, and it wasn't a lot of flow because of what cross matches were happening. So those types of things have to be considered, although he did make a 3 here. But like really quick, just the film between these two guys. Why it was very beneficial to have Ray J out there at point guard is because you didn't watch their summer league last year, but like most of the point guarding was Quinton and Jarris Walker and Tristan Newton, and they struggled with
Sounds like a fun
initiation.
lineup.
Like they struggle with initiation, which I mean it's not super uncommon, but they literally almost finished the entire summer league with more turnovers than assists. Um, Jarris can't always get where he wants to go with his handle. Tristan Newton isn't on the team anymore, and Quinton is more so a dynamic slashing guard than he is necessarily the person who puts the primary bend in the defense and is going to make decisions at the point of attack. So when you had Ray J, it allowed Quinton to play off ball more. The offense made more sense, and then therefore, like last year, there was almost no point to Ben Shepherd even being there because it's like if there's no point guard that can accentuate what Ben Shepherd does, you needed that so that you could see what else can Johnny Furphy do? What can the play finishers on the roster do? I think it's really important at Summer League to be able to have competent point guard play. And Ray J gave them some of that. There you can see Quinton not playing as the stack screener or the ball handler out of stack. He shakes up from the corner. What I liked from Ray J is he was able to attack a variety of pick and roll coverages. So like this ends up being ice to switch. He still manages to get into the paint, although he's pretty reliant on the spin move in order to get into the paint because he's a smaller guard, but he's also not the quickest guard. This is pretty decent out of a Gortat screen, although you're going to see he drew a foul there, but he's very floater dependent.
Yeah.
So I included this clip because Andrew Nembhard, master of the decel step, bionic shoulder. Ray J does not have the same level of bionic shoulder when he needs to clear space at the rim. So like this was actually the final regular season game, and he's going to the floater and he missed Enrique's seal under the rim, but also like the defender for the Cavs there is blocking the shot, not with their outside hands. Like they're able to gather on Ray J's floater gather and get it with their outside hand instead of a weak hand contest. So that's telling you the amount of time it's taking him to stop and pop in that situation. So for numbers for people, he attempted more runners than layups in the half court at the G League level. 83 runners, 74 layups. And the same was true in Vegas, 8 runners to 7 layups in the half court. So you talked a little bit about watching floater offense. What do you think are some of the limitations, or what do you think about floater dependent guards?
It's just it doesn't move the defense enough.
Yeah.
Like I hate to be when I talked to Jamal Shed
The
when we
pull up
did.
three really has to go. Like it
Yes,
really has to go.
the pull up through really has to go, and that's when I talked to Jamal Shed has struggled with it, and Jamal said he wanted to play like TJ McConnell, and I was like, the
So
floater's
he
got to.
wants to take all the floaters as jump shots because TJ doesn't take any floaters.
That's what I said too, and then but he's a floater guy, so I think he just wants to. These guys, I think they get like from the top. Somebody says like, this is a good guy to say you're modeling your game after, like
That's
a
what I think
popular,
sometimes.
like TJ had his showing out, like he's about as popular as a small guard can be outside of the all-star class, and so you say like, well, I want to be like that guy. So
TJ has like a really wide variety of finishing moves, aside from the fact that like the one finishing move he doesn't go to is the floater.
I've never seen him take a floater, at least like in my whole watching life. I don't know if I've ever seen a TJ McConnell floater. Always 2 hands to the ball.
You just want to talk
Always.
like about a smaller guard stirring the drink off the bench, though. I guess that's your guy.
Yeah, like Nash the pick and roll. Don't give up the dribble ever. Fight, fight, fight. Yeah, something like that. But regardless, floater dependent offense is extremely limited because it requires less rotation from the defense. Less rotation creates less gaps for your teammates. And also, floaters don't go in as often as layups do. So, all those things, even though a floater is nice, and depending on the type of floater you take, like a crab dribble floater and like in rhythm floater, like having both of those in your bag depending on how the defense is playing you in the middle of the floor to help negotiate space and beat certain coverages, great. As the main means of how you score to the pick and roll, death sentence. If you are a floater dependent guard, I don't know how you ever justify convince an NBA team to give you the bulk of possessions if that's going to be what you create. It's not enough.
The extra dribble matters. What happens if both your starting and your backup point guard are floater dependent guards?
You take some shots at me, huh? listen, listen. I don't know what happens. I'm gonna see this year. Although I have my I have my frustrations over there, which are well known. I'm known as a Jamal Shed and an Emmanuel Quickly hater for these very things.
Do people pay
Unfortunately,
to get through your paywall to tell you about it?
someone paid to obliterate our paywall, so now I don't have to deal with that anymore.
There you go.
Yeah,
Well, to wrap up this guard discussion, I'll give you a hypothetical. TJ McConnell's out. He's injured. The Pacers have to play a backup point guard. Which guy's getting the call for you? It's game one of the regular season. Andrew Nembhard starting. You need a backup point guard on the spot. Is it Ray J? Is it Quinton? Is it Cam Jones?
can I give possessions to like by committee elsewhere? Can I do like Pascal gets some,
Sure,
Ben gets some?
sure.
I think I would lean that way. These guys can improve over the season,
So you
but
wouldn't
I
play any of these guys. They wouldn't be in the rotation.
probably not.
You're like Pascal's the backup guard or Jarris is the backup guard.
I would try to go to some of that forward creation. I would try and play as fast as you can to avoid this, and I would see kind of how that goes. Or perhaps there's a third guard on the market yet to be named or determined. But those guys don't inspire confidence from me. And TJ McConnell just wrote a piece. He told me not to expect a down year. That hey, listen, he said something to effective like, "You tried to bury us. You didn't know we were seeds." So I think that's actually it. That TJ McConnell didn't say that. I think that's a saying that comes from Mexico. But
I think my thoughts are, and of course the Pacers have more information on this because I don't know what Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman are looking like post Achilles injury.
I'll tell you what, James Wiseman probably looking like an MVP candidate right about now.
It's possible that Tony Bradley's on a non-guaranteed. If they wanted to add somebody with his spot, they could waive him and be like, we have James Wiseman, we have Isaiah Jackson, we have Jay Huff. I don't know how quick I would be to do that because, again, I don't know what Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman look like. And because of what the Pacers found out last year, it can be kind of hard to find a third big in the middle of the season. In this case, he would be a fourth big. So I don't know. But I guess what my thoughts are is they're already on two-way contract. If I was in a spot at the beginning of the year where I needed backup point guard play, I too would be more willing to tilt some of that to Pascal and other options on the court. And I would probably put Quinton Jackson into the rotation. I would allow him to play because we've seen him be able to do NBA caliber things. And the Pacers are going to want to play a deeper rotation because of how they defend and how they play on both ends of the floor. It's kind of important to what they do overall. I think like if I just needed somebody to run an offensive possession and move the ball from point A to point B, I would probably trust Ray J the most at the current point in time because I trust his pull-up shooting the most at the current point in time of the three options. I like Cam Jones quite a bit. I just don't think that he's ready right off the bat to be doing that because of some of the limitations that we've already talked about. I think overall, I don't think that they have a very good answer at third string point guard right now based on what I saw at Summer League. It's possible they might still find somebody in free agency, or it's possible that like, hey, we'll just try to get by with what options we have, and then maybe something pops up in the middle of the year where they're able to make like an end of the rotation type trade, or maybe somebody gets bought out or something like that ends up occurring. But that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah.
The last person that we're going to talk about from Summer League, Enrique Freeman. They drafted him 50th overall last year. He ended up playing some backup big for them because of what I just talked about. There was two people that didn't have healthy Achilles tendons. They were running through Moses Brown and Okafor and like all types of names. I had a third string center power ranking at one point in time. Ended up having Tony Bradley, adding all types of people. Freeman is one of the people who did that. Um, Not currently on a two-way contract, although, like I said, you could open up another two-way contract if you wanted to sign Quinton or Ray J, waive Tony Bradley. What do you think about Enrique Freeman?
I think, listen, if he shoots like 60% from three, I love him. But I I don't know if I see it necessarily. Maybe that's a little disappointing. I this there's not like enough athleticism to overcome the size. There's not enough skill to overcome the athleticism. There's not. I don't see a concentration of enough positives for me to think like he's the answer or an answer of sorts.
I thought for him he played pretty well at Summer League for what he was being asked to do. I personally would have liked to see a little bit more of him at the four, just so I could get a sense of what he can do at the four, given that he is listed at being 6'7", whereas Johnny Furphy is listed at being 6'9". I think that there might be more utility for him being a mobile 6'7" four than an undersized 6'7" center at the NBA level. I will say you will never question Enrique Freeman's motor. That's never going to be a thing that you do, and I enjoy watching that about him. Some of the things that I thought stood out, good, bad, and otherwise. I mean, people are going to get mad because positions are an outdated thing to talk about, but like it is a question of, are you a four? Are you a five? Are you neither one? So like this possession was kind of an amalgamation of a lot of people's limitations to an extent, in that like Cam got off the ball very quickly after taking two dribbles without getting into the paint. Johnny Furphy has to create separation for himself on a three that gets blocked. Enrique gets the rebound, gets blocked by a bigger center on the perimeter, then misses some of the cuts with the back to his back with his back to the basket, and then Cam ends up having to throw up a grenade. Now, when he played out of like two-man handoff situations, I was impressing him backpedal to the corner and be able to make a three. When he was in uphill handoff situations and could fake it, there was times where he made a couple one or two dribble moves. I was like, okay, if you needed to play the four, maybe that's something. But then when you'd watch him turn it downhill, the same advantage as a handoff operator wasn't there as it is out of uphill ones, where that's also a really effective way to space the floor if you're not a floor spacer. And then there's just, in addition to not knowing what position he plays, at times there's positioning issues. So, like when Johnny's driving from the wing there, he needs to crash behind the help and provide an outlet. And he's kind of in an in between zone there. Kind of like here, once Cam rejected that pick, as he's going to do when a pick is on his right side, you really want to see Enrique pop there rather than occupying space when the corner's already filled there at the block. And then Cam's having to take a little bit more of the circuitous route, although he would have probably anyways, because like I said, he wants to get back to the left-handed floater. In the consolation game, which I was the sicko who watched that at 9 o'clock on a Friday night in the summer, he played more at the four because Baker was having the tremendous game that he had offensively. So you got to see him do things like, oh, he's peeling off as the low man, and then Baker's recovering out to the corner. He recognizes the off-ball switch. Then on the screen, although he's clearly giving up a ton of size there on the block if the offense had wanted to do something about it, he defends at the level, and then is going to be able to get a closeout clear on the other side of the floor. There was actually some pretty interesting stuff that Enrique and Baker did at the 4-5 position defensively. On the penetration, he's defending at the weak side slot. This is a hard rotation for a big to make, because when the kick out happens, that would mean that it's Enrique's rotation to get back to the corner when you put a big at the weak side slot, which is why more teams are doing that. And I thought it was pretty impressive that he was able to get down there and rotate to get that block and rotation. He's better rotating to the rim to get blocks than he is as a ball side anchor because of what some of the size issues are. And then you can see the peel switch on the screen. When the screener leaks out, Enrique switches there, and then Baker's going to peel back off to the corner again. And then this one, though, this is the troubles that you just said in terms of the athleticism and the skill. If he is going to play the four, the Pacers are going to do things like, hey, our fours come off of Iverson cuts, and we're going to need you to do something there. And it's like, oh, okay, he's probably not going to do something off of an Iverson cut. So that's where I struggle with it a little bit. Not that you have to run that exact action for him, but I'm not necessarily seeing a clear pathway to, like, for what reason would you, even in break glass in case of an emergency, would you play Freeman over Jay Huff or Isaiah Jackson or even Obi Toppin? If you need a small ball five, wouldn't you just play Obi Toppin? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not seeing a clear pathway at the 5, which is why I would have wanted to see him more at the 4, and we did in the consolation game, but it's like the off the dribble game is still pretty limited that I'm not necessarily seeing him as a 4. I really like Enrique Freeman, the player. It's just that at the NBA level, it doesn't make as much sense as what it did at the G League level or at Summer League.
And to add to that as well, like even if the 4 and 5 distinction is not so much about 4 or 5, it's just, what does the roster construction require you to do, not at your, let's say, the 4 or 5, just like what skill sets are on the floor and what skill sets are on the team and what will be asked of you. Like Pascal was asked to do different things than a lot of 4s around the league, and Miles Turner was asked to do some different things than 5s, but the team was built in a certain image, and as it's currently constructed, as far as I can tell, it's a tough ask for Enrique as far as like what skill sets are, being fulfilled out there for how the Pacers want to play. Who is he jumping over and how does that look? And it's just tough to make that case.
That concludes the Summer League conversation.
An hour and 20 minutes.
I guess I can say, what, Taylor or Enrique for the third two-way contract?
I would go Taylor.
We're
But
in agreement there.
that's a little like maybe some of that is, as you said, Taylor had a little more on ball than I expected, and so it was a surprise, which maybe could give this false sense of development or progression. Like that does happen. And Enrique is more of like a known. He's more known in a lot of the things that he did bring. If there was a big who had like effort concerns and they played the way that Enrique did, you'd be like, oh, this guy literally, it's perfect. He'll be an NBA player. It's tough to interrogate those biases or preconceived notions live. You can only kind of like look back and be like, I guess I missed that or something. But yeah, I would go Taylor.
Oh, we've done an hour and 20 minutes on 5 Summer League players. But we still do need to talk about the center position because there was a change there. Miles Turner now plays for the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm not interested in relitigating.
What?
I'm not really interested in relitigating how and why that occurred. I think the fan base is ready to move on from it. I will say really quickly, though, that to recap, I did in fact say that Miles was the 4th best defender in the starting lineup last year. I don't think there's a super compelling case for who among Aaron, Andrew, and Pascal was a worse defender individually than Miles. I understand some of the weighted concerns there. Although I will say that when you look at the way that the Pacers defense was schemed, you and I did a popcast like 2 years ago, and I remember I told you I think rim protectors are still very important. I think it's important to have a competent big, but I think that defenses are moving away from centers being the strongest link of your defense. And last year, did we not see that a lot of NBA teams are moving away from the center being the strongest link of their defense?
Yeah.
We did. So I still think it's going to be important. And I will say the title of my piece about Miles Turner moving on was they might have to take a step back to take a step forward. I'm not suggesting, depending upon how Isaiah and James Wiseman and Jay Huff look as defenders, that the Pacers are going to be a better defensive team without Miles Turner, or that Miles Turner did not add value defensively. I thought he got better over the back end of the season. I was just saying, I think to a certain extent, Miles was actually at this point in his career a better offensive player than he was a defensive player relative to himself. I think that there had been slippage over the last 2.5 years. And when you're looking at like why the pick and roll numbers were so much better with Pascal on the floor than when Pascal was off the floor, certainly some of that is the drop off with Obi Toppin, but also it goes back to they were very good at absorbing east-west drives because Pascal was very good at being a guardrail. And when stuff was heavily north-south absorbed right at Miles, you did see that they weren't as effective at defending the pick and roll. And I do think that without question, the most impactful and important defender for the Indiana Pacers last season was Andrew Nembhard. So that's where my takes on that came from. I just want to clear up. I did not say that this was somehow going to be addition by subtraction for the Indiana Pacers defensively by losing Miles Turner.
Yeah. It's also when we discussed this, and it was more so, I think I brought it up, if I remember, on the last podcast we did
It
before
was a
Miles.
mailbag question. That's why we talked about it.
Right. Before Miles was absconded. Would that be a good way to
Sure.
describe absconded? Uh, you and I, or I'll make this about me. I thought that Miles, his defense was like, and overall at the highest level when the Pacers were trying to do it. He limited a lot of what they were trying to execute, and some of that wasn't necessarily in the skill set that we see him walk around with all the time, but in perhaps the performance of it. But he was a limiting factor in the last two series, big time, and I didn't expect when I said like the decisions that the Pacers make for the betterment of like this team in the future does revolve around probably finding like the next center for this
Yep.
team. I don't know my exact quote. I did not actually think that a team was going to free up the money to sign him outright. And I did not think that Damian Lillard was going to get waived and the Bucks were effectively going to be, at least the way it works out for them, paying like $50 million to get Miles Turner on their team. I didn't foresee that at all. I thought that it would have to be like, a pivot that looked different. I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to look, but they do have to it came to their door. That decision,
Yep.
it's at their feet now. Now they have to figure out by committee as they look for the next center, or if they want it to be more so like two guys, whatever it looks like in the future. It's we got to see how it goes. And they signed a guy who has the name of a rapper, but is a white guy from the Carolinas. So
I mean, I do think that, if you look back at our podcast, it did have a somewhat predictive nature, although I do not think that the Pacers or anyone else thought that the Milwaukee Bucks were going to waive Damian Lillard to make that happen. I think in my head, I was thinking that Tyrese's injury might have changed the calculus for both sides to an extent, and that maybe there would be, as I said, an opportunity to take a step back in order to eventually take a step forward. And obviously, they're going to try to cobble something together here. So, yeah, Jay Huff, what'd you think when you saw that alert from whoever reported it at the time? I'm guessing it was probably Shams. I don't know. I wrote a piece about Jay Huff, but you
I
didn't
felt
read it. So
I felt this is I'm really not going to have much to add at this part of the podcast. My apologies. I felt like not sad or upset. I was just like, damn, I know so little about Jay Huff's game. I have so little to add. And I still haven't seen that much Jay Huff because I was doing a lot of Raptors stuff. And Jay Huff was merely 18 minutes of film plus 20 minutes of looking at stats guy for me. And I don't know if I've seen him play like 20
yeah.
minutes of basketball. And I'll just be honest with you. I don't know if I've seen him play 20 minutes of basketball. I was like, oh, yeah, he's in the league. But now the team that I cover, the team that I cover has signed him. So I was like, whoa, I got some learning to do. And of course, I'm going to rely on the work you've put in to bounce off of and react
A
to.
very quick scouting report that I did that I found interesting. Once again, our third philosophical basketball discussion, along with the cutting
Oh,
and the potential
yes.
X out
Oh, yes.
rotations, is when I was watching the Grizzlies and Jay Huff, and this also applied to one of our favorites, Jaren Jackson Jr., is
God,
that
he's good. He's such a sick player.
I decided what I would do is I would watch the Memphis Grizzlies play the Oklahoma City Thunder, because we had just watched the Indiana Pacers play the Oklahoma City Thunder for a 7-game series, and how the Pacers were using Miles, which, just to point out, like the defense, and this applies for next year's defense, last year's defense within series for the Pacers defense, is very much a living organism. The defense has changed many times. It changed many times just against the Oklahoma City Thunder. That being said, this is what stood out to me when I watched the Memphis Grizzlies. And I have not seen many teams at the NBA level do this to this extent. So when Isaiah Hartenstein has the ball on the perimeter for Memphis, watch Jay Huff. As soon as he touches it above the break in a handoff situation, he's automatically dropping into a full-on one-man zone. This is literally playing center field. So the only other team that I've seen do this to this extent is the Golden State Warriors against old friend Domantas Sabonis in the first round playoff series between the Kings and the Warriors, where Draymond and Kevon Looney did this heavily to Sabonis. And they would then have the other 4 players top lock and try to really aggressively play passing lanes to try to force Sabonis to be a scorer on the perimeter. So that's why you're seeing Jay Huff, he's back taking away cuts. Like, he's totally playing a one-man zone. The only way that that changes is once the handoff is made, then Memphis's center will then go step out of the paint to defend the action coming off of the handoff. Otherwise, anytime Isaiah Hartenstein touched the ball, and that was Jay Huff and it was Jaren Jackson Jr., it's many steps back. This is the exact same action, the Pacers defending it. Andrew Nembhard being very hard and deny, but you're also seeing like Thomas Bryant's feet are well outside the free throw circle there. Like, they're playing much closer to Hartenstein despite some of his limitations as a three-point shooter. And then this is the one which you and I never actually talked about this on the podcast. I did tweet about it, but Isaiah Hartenstein popping. And this is a unique wrinkle that the Pacers put in between games 4 and game 6, is that when he popped at the top of the key, Tyrese helped as the low man so that they could keep Andrew Nembhard at home on Shea. Like, just for the listener, typically if teams are going to stunt against the pick and pop, that's going to be the high defender on the 2-man side. It would almost always be Nembhard. For the Pacers, anytime if Shea was standing there at the weak side wing, or if it was J-Dub at the weak side wing, they kept Aaron and Andrew home, and they really trusted Tyrese to be playing basically free safety coming all the way off the corner. And we're talking about that cut situation earlier. The Thunder really didn't, it was like they didn't recognize that, because it's such a unique thing that defenses normally wouldn't dare to do, that they didn't readily put Caruso and the dunker to punish it. And they really weren't finding him as a cutter that often either. So Tyrese was able to recover out of it. But like, that alone really speaks to the difference here from what you're seeing from the Grizzlies, where they're playing Jay Huff center field. And the reason I'm bringing all this up isn't even just to ask, like, hey, which one of those schemes would you prefer, or, whatever, but like, just as numbers, because they also did this, I saw, against Walker Kessler. They did it against Jonas Valanciunas. Is the average max screener depth for Jay Huff was 7.7 feet. For Miles, that was like 5 feet. The Pacers and the Raptors were 2 of the highest teams in the NBA last year, defending screens up to a touch. So very different in approach there. And I definitely trust Jenny and the rest of the coaching staff that they will look and evaluate, like, what are these players good at? And if they need to make adjustments, they will. But the thing that stands out to me is I think that most people, when they're looking at this possession from Memphis, are going to assume that that is the more conservative scheme. And it is not. What is being asked from the other 4 defenders on the floor to accomplish playing the big at center field is maximum effort, maximum denial, being top locking, because if you're not constantly denying out on the perimeter, it becomes very easy for Hartenstein to be setting up screening angles, setting up handoffs, and then the players that are getting those handoffs could be playing in rhythm downhill, frequently getting pull-up shots. So you really have to be fighting through. You have to have really good screen navigators, and the Pacers do. But where the article took, because this is what I based the article on, and something that I want us to close out thinking about when we're looking at the center position, is the big overarching question I have, maybe more than any other, is who is the Andrew Nembhard for Andrew Nembhard? Because if you're having to play, if you're wanting to play a big back center field, and you're asking more of the other 4 perimeter defenders than the Pacers already are, especially if they're a team that wants to maintain, hey, our average pickup point is, 50 feet. Andrew's picking up 50 feet. Then you're having a big who's playing with a closer radius to the basket rather than maybe up at the level. I don't know what adjustments they'll make there, but let's pretend that it's similar to this. And then you're also telling Andrew Nembhard, well, now you are completely the primary ball handler. And that will be different for you than when you were the primary ball handler in the playoffs against Cleveland Cavaliers, because Tyrese's gravity isn't going to be out there anymore. It's not going to be as much 4-on-4. And I trust Andrew's guile and playmaking as a pick and roll ball handler. I do. But we've never seen him for a full season be asked to do that much. And to be quite frank with you, I can't think of another player in the NBA at the starting point guard position who would be asked to do that much. So that's my long-winded monologue about differences of how the Pacers defended OKC, leading me to ask bigger team conceptual questions.
Yeah, it's Ben Shepherd. That's the most likely answer as far as like skill set, as far as contracts, politics, skill set, draft selection, all that kind of stuff. It's Ben Mathurin. Ben Mathurin is probably going to step into a lot of new defensive matchups this year, and Ben Shepherd will get more than he did last year, and those will both be in an effort to lessen the load on Andrew Nembhard because, as you said, the totality of being a lead ball handler on one end and constantly taking the other guy on the other end is just not replicated in the NBA, and he would be singular, and I'm sure he'll still have a lot, but they're going to offset that to the Bens.
And there was times, I mean, we talked about it on the mailbag where like in Atlanta, 2-game mini series, they put Mathurin on Tayon, which was somewhat to their benefit because Andrew's a very good off-ball defender, but just so that he wasn't having to be guarded by Dyson Daniels as primary initiator while also guarding Tayon. I guess I would be interested to know from you because it's been floated out there that the two position could be a camp battle. Are you more concerned with having like when I say the Andrew Nembhard for Andrew Nembhard, Tyrese has benefited from the fact that Nembhard, most important defender on the floor, picking up 50 feet, guarding the best perimeter assignments, but also that like when I'm getting face guarded, Andrew can run the majority of the pick and roll and effectively be de facto point guard. Which one are you more interested in helping him out with? Would you rather start somebody who can be the pesky point of attack defender so that Andrew can be doing more of the initiation? Or do you want to maintain the temperature of Nemhel and you're like, we need to hope that somebody else can develop into being the secondary ball handler?
I guess I would. That would be a question I would ask Andrew actually, because I think his input is probably the most important. Because Andrew, you and I were very early on it, but thinking that he was the Pacers' best prospect. Um, he's incredibly important to this team, and the way he wants to develop, I think this year, I would put him above, even though I know it's Mathurin's contract year. I would put Andrews' wants for what this year looks like for him above what this year looks like for Mathurin. And so if Andrew is like, I want a year when Tyrese isn't here to just really try and like expand my offensive game as wide as possible and see where it leads me, then I'm saying, well, we try Mathurin early with a lot of defensive stuff. And if it doesn't go well, then maybe we look more at Shepherd. And Nemhard is kind of like leaning into, he sees Derek White gets paid a lot. He sees that there is an avenue to being seen as like maybe not even just a starting role, but potentially an all-star in that type of role that he currently occupies, and he believes in that. Then you say, okay, we're going to offset it with, more Mathurin stuff and more Pascal stuff. And we're going to try and I think I would lead with it just like, what does Andrew want for this season? Because that's really important, I think. And I, Andrew and Tyrese, when Tyrese comes back, I'd like to see them play together for 6 more years. They are simpatico. They're a wonderful
Yep.
tandem. So I just, this is the one year I think Andrew gets to see what that looks like. And so I'd lead with what he wants.
I think that this is the most compelling thing going into the season because organizationally, it 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 needs to start out being Mathurin, especially in a contract year, depending upon what they feel like his long-term future is going to be. I think you need to see whether he can handle more of those defensive assignments more regularly, what maybe he can do at times as a secondary ball handler. But overall, my head tells me that the easier solve is going to be finding people within that roster who that they can put at opposing ones defensively than readily finding somebody who can do what Nemhard did at the 2 spot offensively. Um, and so I won't be completely surprised if they end up getting to that point, I guess is the way that I'll put it. But back circling to the actual center spot, Jay Huff, what he shot at the top of the key and what he shot from the corners, I think will facilitate the Pacers still being able to play guards in the dunker spot if they want to. I think it'll still facilitate, like, hey, we can still enter the ball high-low pass to Pascal out of the action that I love for him to get seal, post-up plays. It'll still allow them some of the alignment flexibility. I will say that he's very definitely a single coverage pick and roll big. Memphis played a lot more ice coverage than the Pacers did, but there's times where he allows the ball handler to get to very advantageous positions, and then that forces him to be making much longer closeouts. So I'm not expecting him to be like a switch big. I'm not expecting you to really experiment a lot with what depth he's guarding at. Now, if Isaiah's healthy, Isaiah can mix pick and roll coverages within a possession. Like he's a guy that you might be able to blitz with a screen, and then on a secondary screen, maybe you switch later in the clock, and you might feel comfortable with that. Um, James Wiseman, I'm going to be honest, the jury's still out with him for me on both ends of the floor to an extent, just based on like some positioning stuff, some feel stuff, screening stuff. I mean, he does have way more size per position, which gave him an advantage over Isaiah that Isaiah didn't have. Although Isaiah's also put on a lot of muscle, so I've heard.
Jeez.
So, where do you lean on opening night? Who's the starting center for the Indiana Pacers?
I probably think it's Isaiah Jackson.
Okay.
Jay Huff is he facilitates some of the stuff that they want to do as far as like skill set. But Isaiah Jackson, if I'm looking at that roster of bigs, I like Isaiah Jackson a lot. I think he's, and I don't know what it's going to look like really, and they're in the midst of testing that, I'm sure. But Isaiah, he's a fun player, and I like watching him a lot. And also, I would never count out my beloved James Wiseman. Yeah, like the conditioning, you got to run the floor, you got to get back up and down both ways, you got to meet exactly what the Pacers are looking for. Can't teach size, baby. Can't teach size.
The people need to know, do you still have some of the words saved of what you had drafted?
Yeah, in a Google Doc at some point. If Wiseman is playing, we will get the Samson Wiseman piece. But he has to play. What do you have? 8 points and 4 rebounds in a short stint. I was like, here it is. Here it comes.
Even though your bestie said I was the worst basketball analyst in basketball because of my one singular tweet I had about James Wiseman.
That bestie, he told me once upon a time, this was, and I constantly make fun of him for this. He once, when I said that I really like Karl-Anthony Towns, he told me that, Karl-Anthony Towns is better than Nikola Jokic. And I said, I don't agree with that at all. And by that time next year, he had said that Naz Reid was better than Karl-Anthony Towns. Changeable. So you might be his favorite basketball analyst at this point.
Did he also put out a full 13 thread about why you suck?
Oh, he's the king of threads. He's the king of threads.
Well, those are the off-season topics. I don't really think that there's anything else to dig into. This took this long because we were trying to shove it all into one singular podcast.
Woo.
And also, waiting for Samson to get back from Vegas, waiting for me to get all of this around and clipped and prepared into outline form in a somewhat professional manner. So, do you have any?
Speaking of professional, so we were doing these podcasts from the hotel room because we're kind of rough and tumble, the fellas. It's just us three in the hotel room. We don't have like a producer. We don't have all the setup. We don't have all the gear. So we set up the webcam in a hotel room and we talk. And just for the one podcast, Josh is just sitting in the background eating Nerds gummies, man. He's just sitting on the bed and somebody's like, dude, just like, this is your career, man. Like, think about your career. This is unprofessional. And I was like, listen, just because you said that you didn't like this, now Josh is going to be in the background of every single video I do.
I feel like you have friends in the background of a lot of your podcasts.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised.
I think that's part of your relatability personally. I mean, I don't aim to be unprofessional, but I do aim for ours to be laid back, so it feels like people are just listening to us talk about
It's
basketball.
candid. Mm-hmm. It's candid. It's not, sterile. A studio.
A leg's popped into ours a couple times, and your dog popped into it once or twice too.
Yeah. Well, also like when we did one podcast from the main studio, that they
you're fancy.
rent. That's what I thought as well. But then the audio, forgive my cursing, was fucked, man. That they had to, and they put it on Hello and Welcome. So it streamed, but then Jerome, who is an unbelievable producer, had to take it down, clean up all the audio, and then upload it again as its own thing because it was so hard to, because we had headsets, we had the headset mics, and then S had a little handhold mic, and, it was a whole deal. Is just fancier does not mean better. And I stand by that for almost everything.
Thought maybe you were going to say that you were eating like a bunch of chicken while you were recording this podcast since it was late night in a hotel. That seems to be your pattern.
That actually, Wait, did you watch the podcast?
No, you ate chicken late night with me. That's why I brought it up.
So,
I
this
thought maybe
literally,
that was your pattern.
when I arrived in Vegas before Josh and Trey did, and Josh and Trey went to go get the car, and they came back with uh Raising Cane's, and I was eating chicken during our first podcast from the hotel room, and I said, "Welcome to the chicken podcast." So,
That's really funny. So
yeah.
that's your late night move, is going and getting a chicken run of some sort from one
I
of.
love chicken because it's protein and it depends how you make it. Raising Cane's. I'm not saying this is healthy chicken. It's good chicken though. But chicken is healthier than the other meats except for fish, I think. It's protein. I love chicken. It's so fire. Chicken is so great, Caitlin, and I won't let you tell me any different.
Oh no, I like chicken. I was
I know.
running at halftime at the games to Chick-fil-A so that I wouldn't starve to death. I also really like lobster and wanted to take you to the two lobster places. But you
Next,
ran off the Cracker
next.
Barrel.
The antique shopping. Oh, it whispered, it beckoned, like curling
I thought of
fingers.
you today because I ate at Cracker Barrel after
And
my
and
after my trip to the orthodontist. I had blueberry pancakes and scrambled eggs.
I had when we went there, it's my first time ever at a Cracker Barrel. That, what do they call it? Country gravy or whatever it is.
White
Ooh-wee.
gravy.
White gravy is good. It's not really, we don't really do white gravy up in Canada. The white gravy was good. Big fan.
It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite.
Really?
No.
I had
It's a
chicken
big
and
deal
white
in the
gravy.
Midwest though. People like biscuits and gravy a lot. I'm just not one of them, but the
It was
blueberry
I had
syrup and the
chicken and
blueberry
gravy.
pancakes hit pretty hard.
The only pancakes I like are sourdough pancakes.
Okay.
And my mom makes them, and she used to make them for my birthday growing up. And now when I go home to Saskatchewan, I'll have sourdough pancakes at least once while I'm there. They're so great.
And your most
Elite.
recent trip, you were scarfing down sourdough pancakes?
Scarfing, exactly. That is the exact word I would use. Scarfing is such a perfect word for eating. I think it belays the
You've really
eagerness.
appreciated my word usage throughout this. I'm
I always do.
glad I
I'm
can
not.
impress.
Yes.
My vocabulary topped this off quite nicely. So I guess people can share what they like at Cracker Barrel if they've been there. I was prepared to take Samson to Slapfish. We didn't go. There's two locations, one downtown, one in Fishers, and then the other seafood place that I like across the street from Gamebridge, I'm a pretty big fan of as well. But that didn't hit the list because it was a very busy 3 days. But
It
I don't.
went by like vroom.
I mean, in reality, we didn't have a lot of time because, I mean, the second we got there, we pretty much had to go to media. I mean, we really didn't share that much about this trip, but just to fill people in, like the second we got there, we pretty much had to get our credentials, literally almost run to media. Then the game didn't get over until like after midnight, until we were
Yeah.
both back. Then we were both starving to death. It felt like I
It's a
was feeling
sprint.
weak from lack of food, quite frankly. And then the next day, we got up very early to record a podcast, despite the fact that I had only slept for like 3 hours. And then I had to sit there and edit the podcast. And then I was like, oh, we could potentially stay for game 4, but there's no hotel rooms here. So I need to go like running around asking people where else we can stay. And then that day was over. I don't know what else you did, but I was like, I don't have any more left to give. I think you went and ate breadsticks. I don't
Yes.
know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was like, "Do you want to go to Kilroy's?" You're like, "I'm dead."
Yeah, I had nothing left to give. I wanted to go, but I'm like, I don't even know if I can walk there.
Which
And then the
they were
next
really
day,
good.
like I was just like, I didn't know what was going on. Like I walked across the street and bought my sister something at the team store to take home. And then you were at Cracker Barrel, and then the game happened, and the game was over even later that night. Like
Yeah.
we didn't even get back to where we were sitting until like 1:30 in the morning because I was gonna take us to Sonic, and Sonic closed at 1 a.m.
It was,
And that was
well,
pretty much the trip.
yeah, it was a sprint. And the thing too that makes it that way is like the relationship to that type of coverage is largely written. Like or is in like communications or cameraman or something like that, or small video hits. like the Zacho and Bill Simmons is a good example of like, it would have been a lot for them if they didn't have producers and if they had to like go looking for film and to clip everything, but they kind of go on and talk about it afterwards. You and I, like, it's easy for me. I write the piece during the game, but you have to wait till the game finishes. We have to do all the media stuff. We have to go back to an unfamiliar location for setup. And you have to go then after attending all of the media stuff, which adds like 4 hours of presence that you can't be doing stuff before and after the game. You have to go clip everything. And then during the day, you have to not only record it with me, but then produce it and upload it, and then it has to go and all that kind of stuff. It's just like the type of work we do. There's a reason it isn't really done on location. Like people who break down game film and do stuff like that, or video essayists, or whoever the hell is doing it, it's not friendly to like showing up at the game. And the mix of traditional media, new media that we're doing is a lot of work. And we could have done like, we're going to prioritize the just being there, but we prioritize the work as well, which obviously people appreciated. And the people who listen are the reason why we could do that stuff.
I mean,
So God
there's more
bless.
big games coming because I don't know if you knew, but the Pacers and the Raptors are in the same NBA Cup group again.
Yeah. Even I did an athletic hit from the stadium before I went to meet you for chicken. But it was Josh secured the chicken for me, and then I brought the chicken over, and you just watched me eat like 6 pounds of food and
Oh,
just
I starved. You shared none of it. No, I'm joking.
oh
I'd
oh
already.
this oh my days, this
I'm
wouldn't have
joking,
been
people. The listeners, I am joking. I ate Chick-fil-A at the arena. Like Samson did not need to share the chicken.
this wouldn't have been a truly like a playoff type podcast if my character had not come into question.
I retract my statement because I had eaten at Chick-fil-A beforehand. I didn't need to eat Chick-fil-A twice, but I was still hungry. Like I think hotels need to have more vending machines or something. Like even just a candy bar would help me get by.
Indy just needs more options downtown, man. There's like nothing
Well, they
going
have a
on.
lot they have a lot of really good restaurants downtown. They just don't stay open. Like back in the day, Steak and Shake used to be 24 hours, and that really hit because it's right by Gamebridge. But post
Yeah,
COVID, they don't stay open as late.
yeah. We need them more. We need them open later for the coverage. But
I mean,
anyway, that's the trip.
the cup game will have clearly like 2 days off beforehand, 2 days off after. Anyways, that concludes the podcast because this was very long. But I mean, I guess people can split it up because it's not like we're recording podcasts all the time and you can listen to it over the next however many weeks because it's not going to get dated either. That's the other good thing about this particular episode. It's not going to be new Summer League games that make these film clips no longer watchable. We can still debate what center is going to be starting a month from now too. So
Yeah, it's probably like a 2-month shelf life on
I mean,
this.
I expect the views to continue to climb week over week.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to close it out then?
Yeah, whatever closing thoughts you have, for sure.
Or closing thoughts, or do you want me to end the podcast?
You could either way, whatever you feel, whatever strikes you.
It's a read. Okay. Thank you everybody for tuning in with us. What you can do if you enjoyed this and if you've enjoyed the coverage, of course, is you can subscribe over at Basketball She Wrote, Caitlin's Patreon, which obviously helps support her and helps support me and our work, which I still believe is quite singular. And until ESPN pays us $1 million to do this, we will pursue this type of coverage through this way. And it only happens if people pay for it. And we really appreciate, of course, the people that do. We, of course, appreciate the people who are listening and enjoying it on YouTube. You can show your thanks to us as well by liking, subscribing, commenting, all that stuff that helps reach out to other people. And hopefully they either do the same or subscribe as well. It's a marketing game, people. We're earnestly doing basketball and earnestly marketing as well. From myself and from Caitlin, Thank you so much for tuning in. And whether you got into this in the morning or at night or 2 months from now, have a blessed day and goodbye. Ooh.